Welcome to the Disrupting Obesity podcast. I'm Charlotte Skanes, and I'll be sharing ways to regain control over your body and lose an extreme amount of weight naturally. Being fat is about so much more than just the food. It's about your relationship with food. That means that dealing with your weight is about more than just the food, too. You have to change that relationship. You have to start disrupting obesity. I talk to women every day who lost the weight and gained it back, who've lost the same 50 or 100 pounds 3, 4, 5 times. You're not alone. It's very rare that I talk to someone who's trying to lose weight for the first time. Very rare. You're not alone. There is so much shame with this one. And believe me, I get it. I've felt it myself, and it breaks my heart when I get your messages. You're not alone. I maintained a 200-pound weight loss for nearly a decade. Statistically speaking, I had beaten the odds. I was one of the 15 or so percent who was going to keep it off until I didn't. It wasn't just that the people in my life were probably taking it for granted that I'd turned some kind of a corner. You know, I had whole relationships with people who'd never known me when I was fat. I started a new career as a healthy weighted person. And then I put around 115 pounds back on in about the same amount of time it took me to lose the 200. So I feel the shame deeply. I felt like a failure. Oh God, in so many ways. And a hypocrite, a waste. I also felt backed into a corner, humiliated, like I'd let everyone down, like I'd let myself down, like I'd proven some people right. And that one stung just a little bit. I was angry with myself, disgusted, sad, remorseful, sick of it, sick of myself. Oh, there are a lot of feelings with this one, right? Regain sucks. And I want to talk about it. I want to drag it out from beneath that dresser we've kicked it under and deal with it. Now, I've talked about Regain before, but you might remember that I introduced a new segment in our last Ask Whatever episode, the Good for You, Gladys question of the week. I also said in that episode that I was going to make some lemonade out of her snideness and do just a whole episode about gaining the weight back. Given how often I hear from you on this, we're probably going to be talking about it a lot more often. Regain happens often, and I want the shame to stop. So let's just grab it by the horns and wrestle it for the ground. Now, if you missed it, I had a Gladys come for me on someone else's post where they had shared their frustration and their shame because they'd gained their weight back. And I get it. So I said, I get it. It sucks. It happened to me too. And then out darts Gladys in her I'm better than everybody else hat and her I think being passive aggressive is clever coat. And she goes, genuinely curious. How do you gain back 115 pounds? I'm struggling to gain 5. Yeah, so here we are. I told her the truth. I regained it the same way I ended up being 200 pounds overweight, overeating. I experienced some really horrible loss and I just didn't care anymore. I knew I was getting bigger, but I was so emotionally distraught that I couldn't stop eating. Strangely, she didn't say anything else after that. But I opened myself up for this, right? The judgment from people who have got a fraction or none of the story, the derision and condescension. I accept that it's coming, but I don't have to just take it. And they will not make me feel shame. So I stand up for myself because if they come for me, they'll come for anyone. And there isn't anybody who should be made to feel bad for gaining their weight back. We're hard enough on ourselves. I want to say something for a second, though, because some of you have picked up on my pronoun use when it comes to weight. I use personal pronouns. My weight, your weight, their weight, instead of, I gained the weight back. I gained some of the weight. I say, I gained my weight back. You have your weight to lose. It's on purpose, and it's not to hurt feelings. Please don't think that. It's an accountability thing. It was about ownership, right? It was my weight. I gained it. I carried it. I lost it. It's mine. I didn't gain some random universal weight. No, it was entirely mine. and yours is entirely yours, which is actually pretty freeing depending on how you choose to look at it, right? If it was just random, you're pretty helpless in that equation. If it's yours, you're fully empowered to do something about it. Why you gained your weight back doesn't matter. I mean, it does, obviously. What I mean is that it's not going to determine whether or not you do succeed with your weight loss. So in that sense, it doesn't matter. And we know that because people who go on to succeed with weight loss after regain all have different reasons that they gained it back. There's no one size fits all recipe for post regain success. It's not just women whose reasons for regain is grief who end up getting their weight off and keeping it off. It isn't that women who regain because they got happy don't get their weight off at all. Everyone's got their own individual reason that they put their weight back on. And I believe that the determining factor in who gets it off and keeps it off and who doesn't is who does the work to fix their relationship with food and who doesn't. That's the differentiator. Doing the work to fix your relationship with food is different from losing the weight from your body. They're not the same thing. And if you've lost your weight and gained some of it or all of it back, you might already know what I'm talking about. If you think the solution is still the food, you're setting yourself up for failure. Yes, getting it off is all about calories in, calories out, the foods you eat. Sustainability is going to lie in the changes you make to your relationship with the food that you eat. It's not about why you gained it back. And it isn't that your feelings are wrong. I was raised with the mantra that feelings can't be wrong. So I'm the last person who's going to sit here and tell you that the feelings you have about yourself after you've regained your weight are wrong. They can't be wrong. That's how you feel. I am here to tell you that no matter how right you may be, it isn't going to help you now. So you need to let them go. 3A weigh it. Make yourself as aware as you can about the feelings that you're wrestling with, about the fact that you put some of or all of your weight back on. Take a look at it. Look for the feelings beneath the feelings, and then acknowledge what you find, what you feel. Validate yourself. Stop trying to tell yourself that you're not feeling what you feel. It's okay to feel whatever you're feeling. I'm pretty sure I kicked this off with a list of things I felt about myself that were less than savory. So it's okay. Denying the way you feel about yourself isn't going to make the feelings go away. So sit with it for a minute. I'm a big fan of writing things down to get them out of my system. You're feeling it, so you might as well drag it out into the sun and admit that it's there. And with something like this, you can bang out awareness and acknowledgement pretty much at the same time. You're going to have to brainstorm those feelings to write them down. And by writing them down, you're acknowledging that it's happening. It also gives you a handy list to start actioning when you get to the accountability part. Accountability are the ways you're going to do something to get those feelings to stop or shut up long enough for you to get a handle on things again. If you're just generally feeling bad about yourself because you put your weight back on, you need to dig deeper into that. What does feeling bad about yourself mean? Break it down. If you're feeling shame or guilt or anger, those are all very separate feelings that you can address in different ways. You can let go of them separately and differently too. Accountability is all those little steps you're going to take to get back on the top of the mountain. Now, if you missed last week's super long-winded metaphor about mountains, you'll have to go back and catch it. But basically, you want to focus on the little things you need to do to get back to where you want to be. It isn't just the steps that carry you on to the summit that matter. Without the steps you take at the bottom of the mountain, there are no steps to be taken at the top. Accountability doesn't have to be this big, scary thing. It's a whole bunch of little things, and you can take them on one at a time. You don't need more structure. You don't need to cut out food groups or start eating one meal a day. You need the 3A way. That's it. Regain is hard to talk about because it's an individual experience that happens to like 85% of us. I know there are common threads, things we're all carrying in common, but I I don't live in anybody else's head, just my own. So my experience with regain is the only one I feel like I can really speak to. Also, I don't like telling stories that aren't mine to tell. Um, I was crazy aware of what was happening when I was gaining my weight back. And I've heard from loads of you who weren't. You went right back into denial. Not me. I did the denial thing the first time around when I initially gained my weight at just a breakneck pace. The second time around, there was absolutely no denial for me. And it's not that it was a choice to get fat again. It was a choice to eat again, knowing that getting fat was the outcome and I'd have to get a grip on it at some point. And Gladys, if you don't know the difference between those two states of being, please put your keyboard down. Choosing to get fat again and choosing to eat aren't the exact same thing. And if the nuance escapes you, that's okay. Just don't send me an email about it. I talked before about my doorway moment, standing in the bathroom doorway after our trip to Jamaica where we'd lost our third pregnancy. I still hadn't made it off the pull-out couch in the living room and back to the bed we'd slept in the night before we left, when I was still, hopeful and excited and happy. So I was eating like crazy and I just didn't care. I stood in that doorway and I told myself that I'd lost the weight before and I would do it again. But right now, the pain was just so big that all I want to do is eat. So I chose food. Did I want to be fat again? Absolutely not. Hard no. But the pain was so big, I just didn't care. I had to find a way to keep going, a way forward. And to do that, I needed food. A year later, I was pregnant again, and we had our first son in June. And 3 Junes later, we had our third son. And I was about 115 pounds heavier and stranded on my deathbed. Nobody talked to me about my weight when I was sick, but I knew it was a problem, right? It took teams of people to move me, and I barely fit into the equipment. So that was kind of humiliating. I was too sick to care, but I was aware of it. There were some incidents really early, like the first week, first couple of weeks, first few days. But I was also hallucinating and I was dealing with ICU delirium. Not that I have any memory of anyone making me aware that that was happening, except for the time that I was going to rip out my central line, like the one in the jugular vein in my neck. Sean was very aware that I was hallucinating at that time and that they needed to switch up some meds, do something. I'm not sure how they convinced me to not rip it out. I don't remember that part. And I'm not actually sure if I remember it happening at all or if what I have is just built up and around Sean's memory and like his very obvious trauma about the whole thing. I definitely remember him telling me about it when I got home, which is just how we helped each other heal, right? We told our sides of the story. Sean and I had been together for 19 years at that point, and we'd already been through a lot. But when I say we talked, I mean, we did nothing but talk for like 6 straight hours a night for months on end. We would just put on music and lay together and talk and talk. That's how we process. Sean's never been big though, right? Like he's always been a healthy weighted guy, but he's been with me through all of my weights. And I'm 20 pounds lighter, I think now at 44 than I was when I was 12 and he was 11 and we got put in the same home base at middle school. So, but he was an athlete and like a total prep, which that's a word I haven't thought about in a while. I just mean that I don't think he like intuitively understood what humiliation on that kind of a physical level feels like. I mean, obviously he understood it on the same base level that anybody would when you're sick and you can't do anything for yourself, right? Now toss nudity and bodily fluids and bodily functions into the mix, right? And I think we're probably all on the same page with that one. We all get the base humiliation, the loss of dignity. Facing that with an extra 100 pounds on your frame up levels the whole experience in ways that I'm still struggling to articulate. And it's funny because when I was getting ready for this episode, I had like serious anxiety when I decided I was going to try and talk a little bit about some of the humiliation stuff, like chest pains and the breathing. And it took me a little bit to connect what was actually going on. Um, I've talked a fair bit about the physical challenges I faced when I was sick, how much harder everything was for me. And that just makes sense, right? I lost the ability to even roll from side to side. So forget about walking or sitting upright. I couldn't even on an incline for very long. I couldn't roll my body from side to side for months. Um, I was likely screwed with the whole atrophy thing, even if I didn't have my weight, just because of how fast it happens and how long I was unable to move because of everything else that was going on medically. But the road back wouldn't have been nearly so hard. And I don't think it would have gotten as dark. And here's the just making sense part, right? Let's say you have to learn how to sit again. You've got the mechanical bed to help you and 2 to 3 physiotherapists, sometimes a hoist, just like the one that they use at SeaWorld, and you're inched upright and your legs are swiveled to the end of the bed. You're hauled all the way up and it's just completely exhausting. It feels like it's taking hours. And then you sit at the edge, dangling legs that you know you can't even stand on, desperate for it to be over. Your whole body screaming at you. You're begging the physio team to just let you lie back down. They're counting the seconds. Each one of them feels like a minute until they help you reverse the whole process and you lie there gasping and glad that it's over. But you know that you have to do it again and again. I think that's probably the best job I've ever done at expressing what physio looked for me, or looked like for me. But I've done physio. I not that intense, but it really fucking sucked. And I did years of it. I've done physio at a healthy weight. So there are lots of things where I can confidently just say, physio is physio. The searing pain, the repetition, the mental games that you play with yourself, the repetition, the mindset you have to get into, the pain, the exhaustion, the way time screws with you, the repetition. There's a lot of overlap, lots of points of commonality. But for just a second, no matter what your weight is, try to imagine doing what I just described a minute ago with 100-pound suit strapped to your body, because that's what it's like. And I really think nobody talked about my weight, which is what I started to try to talk about a while back, before I went off on my little physio tangent. I think one of my early delusions might have been that I believed that there were some nurses who were talking about my weight. And I'm pretty sure I told my mother-in-law about that when we were in the ICU. And I know there was chatter, and I felt it so deeply when I almost didn't fit into the CT, or there was some question as to whether or not I could. But I can't actually trust that that's not a delusion too. But I mean, it seems plausible. Uh, so I feel like I got being humiliated out of my system early, maybe, and later it was a situation where there was nothing anyone could do, right? They could talk to me until they were blue in the face about the potential benefits of weight loss, but I had to do physio regardless of my size. The reality was I was on very strict NPO orders very early on. That stands for something Latin that I can't remember, but it means nothing by mouth. I wasn't even allowed to drink water, nothing. So they were completely in control of my caloric intake. I had a nose feeding tube for a while, but then I got too sick for that, and it was IV only for most of the time. But physio was still physio, and there wasn't a choice. I mean, there was. I could have refused to do it, but then I just wouldn't have gotten any better. So there wasn't a choice, which isn't to say that I didn't fight them on it, because there were times when I absolutely did. But as you've probably intimated, it was a very complicated situation. And all of that stuff is what I mean when I talk about having lost feeling humiliated at some point. Like, it all just becomes a fait accompli anyway. Like, I let them do the things that I find humiliating, or I die. And that's not really a choice. So there's just no room for the emotion anymore. There just isn't space, because you really do stop being humiliated at a certain point. It's not that simple. It feels hard to explain. For me, it just felt like the emotion couldn't happen anymore. Like my brain flipped a switch or something. And I think Maybe it's a pain thing. When you're in that much of it, you really don't care if one of your boobs is hanging out or, your entire ass is visible. I've always been a super self-conscious person, and I hit a point where it just wasn't there in that way, right? Like I still cared about a lot of the things. The physical humiliation was completely overridden by physical pain. When you've got PICC lines in each arm, drains on both sides of your abdomen, and a chest tube, the catheter is the absolute least of your worries. Like, you seriously couldn't find a way to give fewer shits. And you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it in this way, I feel like the emotional pain I was in helped to shut down the humiliation too, because the emotional pain took up a lot of space. But it's not like humiliation's a new emotion for me, right? I've been humiliated before. It's nobody's favorite feeling, though. I'm also finding it kind of funny that I deal with an anxiety attack about being humiliated by dragging up some super triggering memories so that I can outline exactly what that looked and felt like. But that's the point for me, I guess, right? Even when it was still happening, I refused to believe that I was going through all of that for nothing. There had to be a purpose. And please know, I know cautionary tales don't work. We've got dozens of cliched expressions about how we just don't learn from other people's experiences like this. Like, I was thinking that if I had known that what was going to happen to me could happen, not that it definitely would, just that it was a possibility, would I have done things differently? And I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, I knew it wasn't a good idea to be my size. But did I know about necrotizing pancreatitis and muscle atrophy and Ogilvy syndrome and, all that other good stuff? No. But I definitely didn't think it was healthy to be 115 pounds overweight. We don't learn from each other's mistakes. We always think it won't happen to us until it happens to us. And the reason you could finish both of those sentences for me is because there are a couple of those cliches that we have for this, because it's such a common part of the human experience. So I'm telling you, not just for my own therapeutic purposes, but because I understand feeling humiliated on more than one level. And I felt humiliated when I gained my weight back. But I think in some ways, because there was pregnancy involved, I felt like people were giving me more of a pass. And they were also probably just too busy keeping their opinions about having 3 babies in 3 years to themselves to have time to really go into my weight. And please remember that I actually have no idea if the people in my life felt anything about my regain. Those are conversations we have with ourselves, right? I thought that people were judging me less because I'd gained so much of it back while being pregnant. Because it's not like I was telling people that I was so grief-stricken that I'd thrown nearly a decade of commitment to a healthy weight out the window because I couldn't cope anymore, and I was so desperate to comfort myself, to feed that pain away. People close to us knew what we'd been through, and with my second and third pregnancies, I needed surgery for the ectopic and a hospital stay, so it wasn't a secret. And we'd made it past the 3-month mark with our third, so we were telling people. It would have made sense to a lot of the people who knew me that I'd gained weight back. So I think I spared myself a whack of self-imposed humiliation when I regained more than half because of the circumstances. I gave myself a pass. And I know coming out of my next 3 pregnancies in 3 years with that extra about 115 pounds back on isn't great, but it's not like I'm the only woman to have ever done it. I think I also thought that people would know I'd lost my weight before, so I thought they'd think I could do it again. And it was what it was. Just let the humiliation go. It doesn't matter. You're having conversations with yourself about what other people are thinking too, and it's not helpful. Feel what you feel because it's totally valid, and then you've got to choose to let it go. And remember too that you're choosing to feel what you're imagining other people are thinking and feeling, and that's a choice you're making. You don't actually know, so you don't have to put yourself through that. The only way past this kind of self-imposed humiliation is to do something that makes you feel proud of yourself. Hit it with the exact opposite emotion: pride. There's no shame in regaining weight. None. You know how common this is. 85% of people who lose weight gain it back within 5 years. On average, they end up weighing 25% more than their original starting weight. It's not just you. I seriously consider myself lucky that I only gained back a little more than half. I beat the odds there too. And it doesn't matter if you gain back half or 2/3 or double. All that matters is what you do now. That's all you've got. Imagine how proud of yourself you're going to feel as you get your weight under control. Seriously, like you should spend time daily imagining how good it's going to feel once you know that you're taking the steps to get it done for the last time. Visualization works. Also, spending time thinking about how good it will feel to feel proud of yourself is time you're not spending feeling bad about yourself. See how sneaky that is? And I want to be super clear that it's all about low bars and little wins. Every step matters. Remember that mountain? So you don't have to wait for some big arbitrary milestone to start feeling proud of yourself. We're not waiting for the first 10 pounds or the first 3 pant sizes. Every step is something to feel proud of because you're not going to get to 10 pounds or any number of pant sizes without doing little things like downloading a free tracking app, grabbing a bottle of low-calorie Italian dressing to use instead of butter when you're cooking the chicken tonight and saving yourself a couple hundred calories. Feeling proud of those steps is what you need to do to get to the 10 and 50-pound milestones and the 3 pant sizes and the 6 pant sizes. We're changing your relationship with food, right? That means we're changing the way you think about your relationship with food, and we're driving out the shame with pride. And these aren't little things I'm inflating and should be, otherwise dismissed. I'm talking about tangible steps that you're taking that are actually contributing to controlling your weight. That's kind of a big deal, no matter how small the step is when you think about the alternative here. So yeah, maybe it will feel silly for a bit. I felt ridiculous when I started changing the way I talk to myself. And if you stick around for next week, when I take a look at gratitude and the impact it had on my ability to successfully lose weight, you might end up feeling silly just a little bit again. But I promise you, the payoff is some of the most worthwhile stuff you'll ever encounter. Feeling bad about myself has never stopped me from eating. Not a single time. You know what does, though? The thing that can stop me just cold in my tracks? Feeling good about myself. Feeling good about myself has stopped me from making shit choices with food so many times that I've been maintaining a 201-pound weight loss for 6 years. And I want to help you with that as much as I can. So I've created a couple of resources for you. The first is my free guide, Get Started for the Last Time, and there's a link in the notes. The second is my weight loss workbook, Disruptor, and you can find it on Amazon by searching Disruptor and my name, Charlotte Skanes. Feel free to ask anything you'd like, anything. I keep track of all the questions you send in, and I'm working my way through them as fast as I can here and over on Instagram in my Ask Whatever series. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss anything, and thank you so much for your support. Keep trying, keep tracking, don't be intimidated, and don't give up. You've totally got this. Thank you for listening to Disrupting Obesity with Charlotte Skanes. If you know it's time to take back control, lose the weight, and keep it off, reach out to me privately with a direct message on Instagram that says ready, so you can start disrupting obesity.